Good afternoon runners, and welcome back to another video from me, That Running Girl. In today's video I'm going to be discussing the pros and the cons of carbon plated shoes, the shoe that's had a real movement in the running world for the last 4 or 5 years, and I don't feel like these shoes are going anywhere. The reason why I started trying out this shoe, which is the Asics Metaspeed Sky, which has a carbon plate in it, is because I wanted something to bridge the gap between the Nike Invincible, which is the relatively cushioned but super bouncy shoe that I'm running in at the moment, and a stripped back racer. So I bit the bullet and I bought a pair of Asics Metaspeed Sky, which has the carbon plate in it. So I'm just going to talk you through a few pros and cons of the shoe, what I've found has worked really well for me and what I have found has just felt really unnatural and detrimental to my training and racing. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the rigid plate of the shoe. So this is a drawback of the shoe, in my opinion. When I first bought this shoe, I thought that the carbon plate, I thought that you would feel the springiness, and I thought that you would feel the energy return and the spring back in the entire shoe. I didn't realize that it was just isolated to the area where the actual carbon plate is itself. So when you compare that to the Nike Invincible, which actually doesn't have a carbon plate in it at all, the spring back that you're getting and the bouncy sensation you're getting is throughout the whole shoe. So when you have this shoe on, the whole sole of this shoe offers that level of bounce to it. And so that's why I thought that the carbon plated shoe would offer the same kind of bounce. So I was really quite surprised when the springiness and the energy return level was really isolated to the midfoot of the shoe. So yeah, that's just something that immediately I actually found when I was trying the shoe out for the first time running on a 5 or 6 miler. I felt like it was more of a stripped back racer rather than an actual shoe that gave that intense level of bounce. There's definitely, to me, more bounce in the Nike Invincible than there is in a carbon plated shoe. Another drawback of the shoe to me personally is the high stack height. So because they have quite a high heel height and midfoot area, some people say that this adds an instability, and for people with ankle and foot injuries, it can exacerbate the problem even more, especially if you're like me and you've had an Achilles injury, long-standing injury. It means that your heel can't actually balance out and be flat on the floor because it's always slightly raised. It's obviously raised for the performance edge because it means that you're going to be able to toe off and get into that forefoot position much more naturally because you're literally leaning that way when you put the shoes on. But for anyone with heels and ankle and Achilles instability or tendonitis issues, it means that you can't get that full flex. You can't put your heel flat on the floor. So when your calf is trying to spring off, it's like always on an edge. So it causes a bit of an instability there, which I found a big drawback for myself because I've struggled with Achilles injuries previously. Another thing that I will say about this shoe, which again is a drawback, is the durability and the affordability. So someone told me that this shoe is literally good for about 200 miles, and they are roughly £200 a pair. So that equates to £1 a mile, which is insanely expensive for an amateur athlete. Obviously, it's probably something to keep in your shoe rotation and use for race days so that you don't actually, burn through the miles and just burn through the rubber on the shoes really quickly. But it's definitely not one of those shoes that seems accessible at a price point for amateur runners, especially people that are just getting into running and they're, finding their feet and spending a lot of money on new gear and racing, and it just doesn't feel affordable in that sense. Another drawback of the shoe is that there's no natural biomechanical evolution. So by that I mean, I next year have run for 19 years and I know a lot about, forefoot striking, midfoot striking, heel striking. I know that personally I am a forefoot striker, and if I get tired, I sort of slip into a bit of a midfoot striker. But in these, it's almost like it forces you into an unnatural biomechanical evolution. And by that, I mean, it's like I said before, your heel is never touching the floor. And you already have springs in your Achilles and your ankles and, you know, your toes. Like, everything that you were born with already gives you the ability to spring, you know, add the spring in your step for when you need to run fast, and when you're going uphill, add that spring, or for when you've run, you know, a certain amount of miles and you're tired and you need that energy feedback. You already have that spring in your feet naturally, unless you're injured. So for me, it's almost like, it feels like it's kind of cheating biomechanics in a way, which obviously is the logical thing, because when Nike had the first carbon plated shoes and they were trying the Break in 2 project, which was the project where Nike were trying to break the 2-hour marathon, there was a lot of controversy around the carbon plates in the shoes, and a lot of people said that they were cheating by wearing carbon plated shoes because they were giving them that spring and that energy return, and it wasn't a normal, natural, traditional human function. So yeah, for me personally, even though I've tried these shoes out and I like this shoe, I feel like it's more of a racer, but the biomechanical evolution just sort of, not cheating it, but kind of forcing your feet to run a different way than they would naturally, just feels quite, not corrupt, but it doesn't feel natural to me, which then makes me think that my feet aren't able to run in a natural position because I'm being forced by the engineering of this shoe to run in a certain way, which then makes me think, you know, because the way that your foot lands is the way that your ankle, calf, quads, glutes, everything in your body is in alignment. So if you're forced to run a different way, there's going to be all kinds of problems down the line. So that's another reason why I only keep these shoes for random runs. The last con that I will talk about on this shoe, and before I get on to the benefits of it, is that they seem very fad and trend led. So if you go back to like 5 years ago, or, you know, before carbon plated running shoes came out, there was only racers, there's only lightweight racers, which were, you know, I ran all my PBs in lightweight racers, from 19-minute 5K to 1:28 half to 3:17 marathon. I didn't have any carbon plated shoes, and I didn't have Nike Invincibles, so I didn't have even, you know, the bounce in the foam of those shoes. It was literally just me running and my effort levels and the training that I'd done to propel myself forward to those times and accelerate to those times. So it definitely feels very trend led, but again, on the other side of that, you could argue that it's an innovation that a lot of runners want to try out at the moment, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for me personally, I don't like to change things too much, because as runners, if you start changing things too much, there's always that risk injury, and you're just heightening the injury risk if you're, you know, changing your shoes, changing your distance, changing your routes, changing whatever. If you're changing too many things, variables at too quick a time, then you are leading yourself into an injury path. So now let's get on to the benefits of these shoes. Firstly, I will say that they are super, super, super light. So like I said, they literally are the same kind of profile and weight as a traditional racer shoe. So the A6 Metaspeed Sky and the A6 Metaspeed Edge, which are two different but quite similar shoes, weigh in at roughly 7 ounces, which is the same kind of weight as a Nike Lunar Racer, which was my ultimate favorite racing shoe and the shoe that I ran all my PBs in about 6 or 7 years ago. So yeah, one of the super benefits of this shoe is its extreme lightweight construction, and this doesn't just go for this carbon plated shoe. They are all insanely lightweight, and they all have insanely lightweight construction around the forefoot. The materials used are super lightweight. Everything about it just says performance shoe, which is obviously a benefit if you're going for that kind of race ready shoe. Another pro about the shoe is that it's a really good shoe to rotate in your shoe lineup. So I personally wouldn't wear this every day, A, because the durability isn't there, so it's going to wear down really quick. But B, it's just good to keep, you know, for a track session, or if you're doing a 5K race, or just one of those kind of shoes that you want to put on and feel fast in. But I wouldn't train in this, you know, day on day as my daily kind of workhorse shoe, because I just feel like the durability isn't there, and because of the biomechanic forcing your feet to run a different way, it might lead to injury problems down the line. Another pro of this shoe is that it does encourage forefoot striking. So if you are a really heavy, and by that I mean heavy the way you land, not heavy weight-wise, if you're a really heavy heel striker, it will condition you to land more on your forefoot. But take into consideration as well that when they're on, personally, even when I'm standing in these shoes, they don't feel that stable. So if you have any kind of issues of, supinating, which is where you fall on the outside of your shoe, or turning your ankle so that you sort of fall and turn on the inside of your ankle, which is how I got my recent Achilles injury, which I've been struggling for the last almost 2 years, but I'll make another video on that. They don't feel that steady when you have them on your feet. So it definitely takes a bit of a learning curve to kind of learn how to run in them. And again, that to me is a bit of a red flag, because personally I think you should put on a pair of running shoes, box fresh, and be able to run naturally and, performance ready, and just hit whatever times you want to hit. I don't feel like there should be any kind of learning curve in how to run in the shoe. To me, that just feels so unnatural. So that's a reason why I only keep this kind of shoe for like once a week, or track races, or insanely fast races, which I'm not actually doing at the moment because of my Achilles injury. That being said, I did run 16 miles yesterday on a super hilly route, which was just over 1,000 miles, over 1,000 feet of elevation. And I was really, really pleased with how that went. My Achilles held out really well. So I will do a separate video on that soon as well, because I will be running my 30th marathon next month, and I thought I'd do a quick kind of recap on how to run really well in your long training runs, because that's something that I feel I've got better at recently, even though I've not done many of them. But yeah, stay tuned for that, and I hope everyone that ran races lately, including the Great North Run, did really well, and I hope if anyone's preparing for an autumn or a fall marathon, that also goes really well. So yeah, my next video will probably be about either my 16 miler and my marathon prep for my 30th marathon, or some quick tips on how to keep positive and resilient and keep the pace relatively steady in your long run. So yeah, until next time, I'll see you in my next video.